Hello, everybody. I am Dom of XComicReleases.com, assistant editor, and today I've got two special people who reached out to me 1.5 months ago to talk about this epic special project that they are both working on. I am joined today by writer and creator of a lot of video. I found out a lot of video games from my childhood. That is none other than Keith Arem. Thank you for joining.
Thank you for having me.
And also, one of somebody that I've been talking to a lot in the past couple months. He is, of course, the special projects director of this specific campaign, and somebody who I have been lucky to talk to, reach out to. That is none other than Chris Yates. How are you doing today?
Good. Thank you. How are you doing?
Oh my gosh. It's weird because okay, so I'm in California, based in Northern California, or I guess the Bay Area. I guess however people call it. And we got into the mid 80s like 2 days ago, and then all of a sudden it has turned into mid 50s and 60s again because weather shifts.
Right.
But that I guess that's Bay Area weather for you. But I'm doing all right. Thank you both for joining me today to talk about this epic project that we have here on here in this interview. But if I may, Keith, before I get to all of this, I want to say you worked on Black Ops 1 and 2. Those were the video games that my friends and I played to no avail, no end. So you are indirectly, without me even noticing, like a super big part of my life and my childhood. So I wanted to say thank you for making it all epic.
Yeah, no, it's amazing. You go back and you look at all the work you've done over the years, and it's amazing how certain projects influenced other uh, other projects, other creators, other people doing their stuff. And it's amazing for me to get to work with people and meet with people, and they're like, "Oh yeah, I worked on that, or I played that when I was growing up." And so it's kind of nice to come full circle now working on projects and getting to connect with other people that kind of know the same heritage and history of what we worked on.
It's pretty insane to think about because on one hand, like me as like an 8 9 10 year old or whatever, the last thing I'm looking to do when I'm playing video games is like, oh, who worked on it. All I know is like, the whoever made it on the top of the box, and that was that. But now it's like coming to realize, like, now, like, since high school or whatever, I'm sitting there like, I want to appreciate the credits of the movie because there are a lot of people who worked on it. And now it's like, hey, and I actually get to talk to some of these people who might have shaped me in one way or another. Like, that is insane to me, honestly.
It's amazing too because those games are now they still come around. You've seen remakes on some of them, like Modern Warfare have been remade and some other ones, but it still goes back to the original roots of what it was and the story and the performances and the characters. And for me being a performance director as well as a writer and creator in my own right, it's kind of nice to bounce back and forth between all these like big classic iconic franchises that I get to work on and then get to do my own now.
It is pretty insane to think about, like, sort of the roadmap there. But it's nice to see you come full circle and be able to not only work on stuff that obviously, like, a lot of people have been impacted by, but now getting to say, hey, this is my own thing. I'm getting to write something for myself. I mean, that's a pretty nice thought to think about.
Yeah, it's neat too because you get influenced by projects that you worked on or you had a big hand in something on certain projects and you get to see them come to fruition. But games are such a collaborative space where you have hundreds of people working on a title, and each of the different departments are kind of coming together to make it work. The difference is, I guess, in a movie or a graphic novel, you have a smaller team, and that creative vision has to kind of get made with a much smaller group. So to kind of see how it works in the game industry and then bring that into film or to graphic novels, it's a great progression of the career because then you kind of have a very collaborative spirit and working with other people, then you get to sort of incorporate their ideas as part of what you do as your vision.
And speaking of that vision and also how this came to be about, obviously this is, Frostroad is a graphic novel, very much different so from a video game because video games, like, I can only imagine how many teams are working in collaboration with each other and with the studios that they work for and whatnot. So, how did this project come to be about with this specific graphic novel, and how did you two decide say, "Hey, let's bring it to Kickstarter and let's get the show on the road"? How did all that come to be about?
Yeah, so for me working in the game industry, a lot of the big actors I was working on these projects with, like Gary Oldman or Sam Worthington, these guys that I just really respected working, they would pull me aside and said, "When are you working on your own stuff? When are you developing your own films and your own projects?" And that really inspired me to start developing my own stories, not just for games, but for film and for television and for animation, which I was working on. And so Frost was an early script that I was working on after I had worked on Ascend and a few other books, where I was trying to design a screenplay and board it out so I could have my first film that I was going to direct. And unfortunately, during the development of that script, we had a fire that had just wiped out our studios and kind of stopped all production and everything I was working on. And so with some delays like that, went back. I ended up did shooting my first film called Phoenix Incident a few years back, and had a great relationship with my friends like Yuri Lowenthal and some other actors. And so I went back to Frost Road, which is an earlier script, and decided to take those storyboards and that screenplay and finish the graphic novel that we were doing. And so that was really the starting of this book, because I was already starting to work in the graphic novel space, but this was something that we envisioned as a movie. And now we're able to bring it together as a book and now explore all these different sort of aspects of the story.
That's insane to say because like me hearing the about with the fires and whatnot. I mean, somebody who has lived in California for pretty much their entire life, a lot of those can definitely be devastating. You know, as far as like the soul can go, and you know how many people are impacted by it. But there's like a lot of stuff there, like you know sometimes like in the midst of a lot of those tragedies, like some things you just can't take back. But it's really nice that you've been able to bounce back from that with this out, sort of like, hey, like uh, as a redemption recovery part, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, it was wild too, because I was in the middle of working on Modern Warfare 2 at the time, and we had to stop production on the game. The team was gracious enough to kind of hold production on all the performance, capture all the dialogue we were recording so we could rebuild part of our studios and get back on our feet. But when you're working on big franchises like that, your personal stuff kind of gets put aside. So, and then right after that, then we've got things like COVID and other things, and Hollywood shutting down with strikes. So I think there's never really a great time in our business just to go out there and say it's going to be successful. So I think you just have to kind of take control of your own destiny and decide to do it on your own timeline and do something more for your own ambitions than trying to hit the market or try to get something that's going to sell or something like that. So right now where Kickstarter is at, coming together with like Chris Yates now, and Chris's background and what he's done was like the perfect storm of taking what we've already built and his expertise and knowledge, and then bringing that to Kickstarter and bringing that to the fans directly.
That's awesome to hear. And Chris, how did you come about with this project? Because you know you reached out to me a couple of months ago asking me if I want to do it, and there was like, you know, I said there's no way in heck I'm saying no to talking to you guys about this. So how did you get involved with the project?
Yeah, so me and Keith met through a friend in December. First time we've ever actually met. So I was originally at Massive, and Keith has done a book with them called The Exiled with Wesley Snipes, but we had never met actually. I met with his co-writer and co-creator Adam Lawson, but we met, became kind of fast friends. And then when I was meeting him for the first time at his studio, I was kind of like just enamored with the production and the facility and everything like that. And I was just like, dude, why haven't you been able to kind of do this yourself? And as he said, he's just kind of been focusing on Call of Duty, kind of, the things that pay the bills, so to speak. And then it
Mm-hmm.
was just much like, I'm not going to put my name out there, but I'm going to put my name out there and say, I can help. I think I can help you get this, out to the public in a certain way. And so we just started kind of collaborated and just started having that back and forth, that kind of natural dialogue. And then I think before he even asked me to join the team, I had reached out to Kickstarter with Sam, who's been amazing for us. And I'm like, hey, I have this guy. I think you should meet him. Like, let's just kind of get the ball rolling. And before we even really thought about, really getting solidified, we just, all right, we're going to start a Kickstarter. Like, we're going to start doing it. And then February was supposed to be our entire month of planning. Okay, how do we do the interviews? How do we get the press? How do we kind of set this up to be the best, or biggest thing we can do? And then unfortunately Keith got sick, and then all of this stuff kind of happened, and it was just like, well, Sam at Kickstarter thinks we should launch in March, so we'll try and stick to that. And we're just gonna just roll the dice the best way we can and just, be as transparent and honest and figure out what works because I think Keith may allude to in another story is that like this has been around for 10 years. And it's like, how do we make this big, beautiful coffee table sized book? Like, what do we do with it? And so it's like we can't really change the narrative. And Keith was very specific in how he wanted it wanted it to be presented with the acrylic case. And so it's like, okay, let's use maybe some of that PCB kind of resources and classes and talent, I guess you would say, and just bring it to people who may don't know how to get into the industry or want to just figure it out or just like, hey, I want to get into voice acting, but how do I do that? Well, maybe if you come to here, we can offer those services. So it's just kind of that natural progression of like, how do we do something that's unique and different, but also, just being ourselves. And so to kind of answer your question, it was just very kind of organic and natural. And then now we're here and we're talking to you, my friend.
And I'm really, really glad that you guys were able to not only get together with this project, but also say like these are all the tiers that we're going to be doing. This is all of the behind the scenes stuff that we're hopefully going to be able to put in the hands of a lot of people. It's something that you also brought up too, because right now I'm taking I'm a business analytics major over at my institution. I'm taking also a lot of marketing classes because that's just part of the trick with graduating. Like I have to take them. My question to you, Chris, like maybe this is more of a personal one for me, but for those who maybe want to get out into marketing or figuring out how to get these into the hands of the public, what would you say? Like, do you have any tips as far as being or telling people like, hey, this is like how you get your name out, this is how you get your projects out? Do you have any tips on that?
I would say the first thing that kind of jumps to me is be very specific in who you're trying to target your audience. So again, you can say, "Oh, I want to target the comic book people." Great, but who is that type of person specifically? Like, are they non-binary? Are they, of what ethnicity? Like, you want to try and be as very specific as you can because then the algorithm and things like that. So you kind of know who you're talking to. And so for us, we specifically wanted to be very like horror, video games, comic books, high-end comic book collectors, as you know, with Omar, people who are super specific to this niche audience of wanting high-end collectible books. And so that was kind of our thing. And so we did the general reach out, or at least I did, with kind of the comic book oriented press, the horror oriented press. I mean, it's kind of an easy lift with Keith's resume and with Yuri and kind of the dead meat angle of it all again, because we're partnering with Chelsea and James, who, I mean, they're from Dead Meat. They have a YouTube channel over 6 million followers. Like it kind of speaks for itself. So we're very lucky in that regard that we just kind of, or I should say, I pitched out the packet of like, hey, here's our project. We'd love to talk to you about it. And it kind of just spoke for itself. But if you're not able to have those kind of embarrassment of riches, I would say just be very specific in what you're trying to achieve and know exactly how much you want to fund. So in the terms of Kickstarter, like if you're someone new in the industry and you're like, hey, I just want to make a comic book that's either 20 to 48 pages. Like, how do I do that? Well, make sure you have like a pitch packet. Make sure you have an EPK. Make sure you kind of have all the things that'll make it easier for someone to do their job. Like, make sure you have a summary page, you kind of have your previews page and all those kind of things that just makes it easier for them to kind of to shine a light on you in the best way. So my answer is to kind of know who your target audience is or who you would like it to be, and then just try to make a product that is just so undeniable and make sure that you don't want to like, I don't want to say like up the FOMO of it, but make it something where it feels like you can't miss it. You know what I mean? Make it almost an event if you can, as best you can. Because I know it's hard. You're like, I'm a first time creator. How am I supposed to do that? Well, that's the wonderful thing that we're all trying to figure it out. And so I think with all those things in mind, that would be my best way to answer the question.
No,
And I'm talking way too much.
no. It's your guys' chance to be able to tell me about this. I mean, it's your guys' project, but no, appreciate it for the answer because I think that marketing and pushing, the message to as many people out is one of the more underrated and non-talked about things in comics. Like even if we take like the big two of it all, right? Like all the superheroes, it's really easy to sell somebody saying like, hey, like Superman is on the cover of this, go buy it, because I guarantee you there's a lot of people out there who really like that character.
Yeah.
But for something that's creator owned or something that might not have that added picture on the box, like you have to think of other ways to say, this is how we can get this product out to people. This is how we can get that message out to people.
I think
100%.
I think
And
that was actually a kind of a big thing for us too on this, because even though we're really proud of the book and the quality and the story and the characters and everyone that's involved, our history speaks so much louder than, people's knowledge about what we did. So people don't know Frost Road until it's out there and the word of mouth spreads, but people know a lot of the projects we've worked on. So that was why some of our upper tiers, we wanted to kind of give back to our community and kind of use Kickstarter not only as a way to kind of make this introduction to the community and follow up on books like we've already done, but give back in a sense of being able to help educate people to get into the industry and learn the way we did.
Well, just that's interesting to hear. No, for sure, and that is a really cool thing that you guys are doing. And Keith, well, Chris also alluded a little to this earlier, but mentioned this has been in the works sort of for the 10 years. So how did this evolve to say like, hey, we're gonna make this a really cool hardcover, or for the people who might be like digital only? How did the story come to be about? Where'd you get the inspiration for this horror book?
So this was a story that I had collaborated with another friend of mine in the game industry, Brandon Humphreys. And Brandon and I have worked on about 3 other books together and always loved the genre space, horror and sci-fi and thrillers, and working on projects to that sort of that audience. And this was a story where we had talked about this concept of some kind of a signal or a sound or a wave or something that was affecting a small town. And the story kind of grew from there. Brandon had grown up in a small town back east, and he lived on a street called Frost Road, which is how we came up with the name. And I was starting to develop screenplays and starting to write. So I went forward and started working on the screenplay, and then developed that into storyboards. And I started bringing in a lot of friends like Trevor Goring from Watchmen and X-Men.
Mm.
And then I had also been working with Christopher Schei because we had a lot of success with Ascend, which was my first book on Image Comics. And so with the combination of those guys, we brought in RJ Cooper, who's also an editor and just a fantastic artist, to be able to help kind of finish all the pages and get our borders going, the layouts. And so now we had the makings of a really, really strong book. But as we were talking about earlier, the timing wasn't really, really good to do this. Adam Lawson and myself had done Exiled about a year and a half ago with Wesley Snipes, and that was doing tremendously well. And that gave us a lot of confidence that if we could kind of go out, bring in Chris Yates to be able to help us on the Kickstarter side, that we could actually get to our audience directly and start to just use this as our kind of our first sort of flag in the sand to kind of show some of the properties that we'll be doing at PCB. And over the next 3 years, we have a whole slate of about 6 projects we're going to be rolling out through Kickstarter and directly to our fan base.
There's a lot of Kickstarters and projects to get out, but hey, I mean, kudos up to you, man. I mean, those are definitely not easy to coordinate and get all those. I'm really, really impressed by the output and what you guys are able to do.
Yeah, it was neat to see, even with Exiled, because obviously we had the weight with Wesley Snipes behind us, and that funded very quickly and went way over our expectations. So for this one, we wanted to, as to kind of what Chris was mentioning earlier, you have to really know your audience. And I think one of the other things with Kickstarters is you really need to know what you are going for. They always kind of advise you, it's like, you really don't want to do what you want, it's what you need. And for Kickstarters, you don't want to just kind of shoot too high or too low. You want to make sure that you're getting that specific target. And for this case, we already had the book finished, which was great, but we really wanted to get the printing and the fulfillment on a very high level. So this is a coffee table book and an oversized like 7x10 book with an acrylic hardcover. So that was something really important for us. And that was why the Kickstarter was really kind of a very amazing way to get to the fans directly, because it's not sort of a hypothetical project that we're hoping to get done. This is something that is finished, and we're going to have it in people's hands by San Diego Comic-Con this July.
Which is that, I mean, that's quick. I mean, that's only a couple of months in terms of you already have the book out. Just try to get it to our base as quick as possible, and it's all in people's hands. Like, that is awesome to hear.
Yeah, And then between that, then we're also offering these master classes that we're going to be doing in July and August, right after Comic-Con. And those are going to be tours at PCB in Los Angeles. We're going to do some private meet and greets at San Diego. We're doing some Q&A panels. And then we're doing some mentoring classes. So people who want to get in the industry can also learn from us the way that we teach acting and other things at USC and other schools. So it's kind of a nice way for the audience to kind of engage with us on a variety of ways, whether they're fans or they're creators or they're actors or they're people that just want to sort of have that either review of their material or some guidance in their career, or just fans and they just want to get autographs. There's kind of something that, it's a nice way to interact with our audience in a variety of ways.
That's super cool to hear. I mean, just the different the different packs that you're giving to people as like in terms of offering, hey, this is what we have for the regular fan, this is what we have for the people who might want to break into Hollywood, or maybe you just love the process and want to learn more. Like those are awesome tiers to hear, honestly.
A lot of people don't know
Yeah.
where to get started, I think. And so I think that's why we wanted to give them that inroads.
And then also to kind of circle back is the word experience is like, because kind of the thing me and Keith are talking about is like, how is someone going to kind of digest or experience thing like when they open the box? How are they opening the box? Is it going to be like, what's that full on from like A to Z? Is there like a white glove service we can provide? Because we all know there's certain Kickstarter companies that kind of just, pre-order, do those things. And I get it. It's a business. I respect it. But it's like, how can we do things differently ourselves? Is it something we can give them that one-on-one master class? We can kind of hopefully give them a presentation that looks beautiful. Is it potentially packaging it a certain way? Is it giving extra goodies? Is it like, what are those little things that we can do that could potentially set us apart from everyone else to show you like, hey, we understand this is our first Kickstarter and we know 20 grand is a lofty goal, but like as Keith said, we're kind of planting that flag in the sand because this is what we want to do. We want to give people a big, beautiful book that they can experience and hopefully go above and beyond their expectations. Or at least that's what we're striving to do. And so to kind of circle back is just like the experience. That's been our biggest thing of like when it comes to the master classes, like how can we go above and beyond besides just teaching? Like what are their specific questions they might have? Like how do these people feel like they have a safe space so they can be like, hey, I don't know where to start, but I want to do this. And it's like hopefully Keith or Christopher Shy or whoever the kind of person may be can then provide those answers. So again, I just always want to make sure that we're conveying that word of experience because that's what I miss and I love because everyone hates it when you get a Kickstarter and maybe it's 6 months, a year, 2 years late, and it's just kind of packaged haphazardly. And again, no shade, but it's like, how can we just be different? How can we put that little extra love and care into it to show fans like, hey, again, it's our first project, but we're here to stay and we're here to hopefully do more of these. And we just want to make sure you're along for the ride.
No, for sure, because one of the things that I've always loved about, at least, the like my heydays of playing Call of Duty, which again now I found out that Chris or Keith is just like a part of my life, and that is like when I'm playing, those games, like I always have my like it always feels like you guys are talking to me in some way or manner whenever like I'm on the sticks, whether it's the story or even if I'm yelling at the screen because, I just got killed in like the most insane way to think about. But I often find like, graphic novels and comic books to be, the most intimate form of media entertainment that you can get because those speak to you in a way that something else can't, because you're part of the story, or you're seeing yourself in the character, or you're going through that journey. And to hear that you guys are making the Kickstarter in that like the same experience or the same level as far as the hand in hand goes is a very, very nice thing to hear. And also like one of the coolest things I think you've talked to me so far about Frostroad.
Yeah, and the world itself is completely different. It's kind of interesting that our campaign has this sort of behind the scenes look because we didn't want it to be overwhelming with the campaign in the sense of this is how we made it and kind of showing everybody and being those types of creators. I think our focus was a little bit more so of, how do we create a prestige project that has its own world and its own sort of history and art style and make it unique. But then also kind of show the audience that, we're dependable. We have this long, elaborate history. I think some people are maybe a little bit cautious when they get into Kickstarters that it might not fulfill or it might not be to the level of their expectation. And for us, we kind of wanted to exceed that, kind of like what Chris was saying, that we really want to kind of go that extra mile. So by showing them our history and the projects we work on, and they understand the quality bar of what we want to do with our own projects, that Frost and the upcoming projects we'll be announcing later this year are going to be kind of showing that PCB has this commitment to quality and to our fans, and be accessible as well. Like we love this ability to do interviews, to do Q&As. We're going to be on tour this year on at least a dozen festivals and conventions, meeting fans and doing signings for all of our projects. So this is really important for us to be able to have this communication with our audience, because that really influences our projects and what the audience likes, what we like to create, and then hopefully have the longevity of having many more of these to come.
No, that's awesome, because the communication part of it, and you telling fans or telling somebody else like just about the process and how you guys are going through this. I mean, it's I think one of the most unique things I think I've heard of any Kickstarter, but also too, like, people like me who love video games and playing video games, sometimes like we might not know the ins and outs of like how some of this stuff works, how scripting works, how storyboarding works, and how you manage to, like, put different things in. Obviously, like, comics and graphic novels are a bit different in that way, but just to be able to learn something new from this specific thing is, I think, one of the most unique things that you guys have on board, honestly.
And everybody involved actually comes from games or has a pretty good history in video games. So even though this is a graphic novel and we're super proud of the artwork and the story and everything that's there, our lead character was modeled off of Yuri Lowenthal, who's, Spider-Man, and he's in Helldivers, and we've got Chris Gialix and Ed Ross and a lot of these actors that we used as photo reference. So people who are familiar with video games are also going to see that correlation. And then from a story aspect, it follows sort of the same influences you'll see in Resident Evil and Silent Hill, and a lot of the cultural influences we have from games. And having worked on a lot of those franchises, it's nice to kind of bring my experience of what made the game special from the performance side, but also kind of from the story aspect and the artwork side. We wanted the worlds to be really complete and kind of also based in things that gamers and just movie lovers and horror audience members would really sort of gravitate towards.
That is super cool. Now, honestly, that I'm thinking about it, I'm like, man, where was this like 15 years ago? When I was playing Call of Duty, but better late than never, like that is
Right.
That's awesome to hear. I have one of my friends also plays Helldivers like a lot, and I'm going to tell him, after, like, hey, I got to talk to somebody who, like, worked on this and that. So I think just having that opportunity, honestly, super, super cool.
It's a small community too. I mean, if you look at all the actors that are in, games like Helldivers, that kind of stuff, you see people like Erica Lindbeck, who we had worked with for years, and the fact that she's not only in games like Helldivers and every other video game, but she's also a huge horror fan. She's supporting our campaign. We were looking on there, and she had actually made a contribution a little while ago, and I called her up. I was like, what are you doing? And she's like, I want to support you guys. And it's just nice to see that we have such a community that gives back to each other. And that's something that we really, really love in the voiceover space and the performance capture world in video games. It's actually a very small community, and everyone really enjoys each other's company and supporting each other, and see everybody kind of developing their own projects. And it's very different than some of the other industries that we work in.
That is so cool. And also too, I want to ask specifically about, the creation, and you being a writer, obviously, Keith, in this regard, because obviously graphic novels and comics are definitely a much different format than how you would script for a video game or a script for a movie. So talk to me about how some of those differences were for you in terms of creating this novel, and getting that out, and how the differences were when you said, like, I'm going to write this book, I'm going to get it out to the public.
I think on the outset, I had the expectation, and maybe other writers do too, that if you're writing for a screenplay or you're writing for a movie or a TV show, that the concept of that story and then the storyboards would then translate into doing a graphic novel or a comic book. And to some extent, yeah, I mean, you can kind of use that as an approach. And even though I did use that initially, I found that collaborating with other artists, I'm an artist myself, but not at the level of like Christopher Schei is, and Christopher's artwork is just amazing. So as a writer, to sort of dictate that for an artist, I felt was not as collaborative as letting him storyboard out the pages himself. And even though I had already worked with Trevor Goring, who's also an amazing storyboard artist, his boards were very much from a filmmaking standpoint, a cinematographer working with a director to envision what your shot list is going to be. But in a graphic novel, the progression of a story, sequential images and pages plays out a lot differently. There's an artistry just in the creation of a comic book or a graphic novel that you don't have in film. And so to take advantage of what the medium can do, as opposed to just sort of regurgitate from one medium into the next, I think was doing it a disservice. So I thought that collaborating with an artist like Christopher or RJ or with Trevor in their own respective mediums was much more collaborative the way that I was working in video games. So that was kind of the first approach, I think, as a writer, just to say, let the artist do what the artist does. And as a creator, even though I have a strong respect for it and have a vision for what it is, I can still bring that together and then guide sort of the overall vision of where it needs to go, but then not step on the toes of my team that's there. And I kind of feel that, like, to be a director or to be a creator, you need to understand each of the disciplines that you're working with. You don't have to be an expert, but you have to know them enough to creatively be able to understand and communicate what that is. And so I think that's kind of the difference. A lot of creators start to realize that comic books and graphic novels are much more liberating because they don't have a lot of the limitations or the cost involved or the size of a team that you have on a motion picture or a large video game. But you still have the same creativity and the same vision. And that's been really liberating and exciting for me as a creator to start to play with these, because now I can see what the movie's going to look like, but I can also see what the game's going to look like, but I can also focus on the book and make sure that it's the best it can be for the readers.
No, for sure. And that's honestly one of the, I think, the coolest parts about making one of these, comic books or graphic novels is that you get to work with so many other people who have that same inspiration or have that same vigor and I want to be able to put this together in, the best possible way that I can. And to hear that you guys are all, like, seemingly all in sync in terms of, I'm going to work on the script, I'm going to work on how this panel looks like, or, the art of it, or the motion of it. Like, that is a very cool thing to hear. And I mean, very much, I think, like a lot of, some of my favorite video games, where I'm just like, man, I knew that everybody was in sync with the way that, the music team working along with the people who are working on the graphics or the motion. Like, that is so cool to hear. Honestly, like, I wish 15-year-old me were here, the first time I play video games, and now it's like, that you're reinvigorating that part of me. So thank you.
Well, I think the challenge now is that a lot of creators don't also understand the business, and having been in the business for so long, you see the good and the bad and the ugly. And I think that the challenge for us as creators is that we're sort of focused on the creative, which we should be. The problem is that it is a business, and sometimes we get lost in how our work gets distributed or monetized. And what I've seen consistently is a lot of friends who really want to sustain their ability to keep doing graphic novels and comics and stories. It's a real challenge because the distribution of a lot of comics and the way things have done historically has been challenging for a lot of creators to sort of monetize their work. And so what we're trying to do is take sort of our experience in video games and what we've done on that side of the business and hopefully start to bring that to this audience. And on the flip side, Kickstarter and what they're doing and allowing audiences to participate and fund and pre-order some of the projects, especially these high-end projects. It's like the perfect blend right now, especially where we're coming in, because hopefully we can address the distribution issues and make it more equitable for other creators like us to get their work out there. And then to have Kickstarter and the audience help fund that is going to allow more and more creators to sort of get their work out there. So I'm kind of excited, not just for this project because we're so proud of this thing and we have been working on it for so long, but what we've really brought behind the scenes is not just our experience to it, but our experience in sort of where, the downfalls are of distribution. And even though it seems like such a lofty, big business idea, we really feel that, like, it's a really great time for creators to get out there and start getting their work financed and into the hands of the audience directly, and hopefully we'll be a big part of that.
No, that's super cool, and super cool to hear that you guys are managing through that and obviously getting all of this out. And I know that you also mentioned earlier with with both of you in terms of just like what you guys have like gone through just to get this out, just in general. Would you say that you two are driven by the art through adversity type of byline, like I can make better things, or maybe like make cooler concepts in spite of whatever's going on in the world around you?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I think I'll speak for myself because I don't want to speak for anyone else. But it's like the first time is you have the romantic version of a thing. Like, oh, I want to make a book. I want to do a thing. Because I'll speak for myself when I say, so I used to work for Disney. I used to work for United Talent Agency. And when I got laid off from Bob Iger, he's like, hey, we're laying off 7,000 people and we're starting with your department. I'm like, great. What do I do now? And so I kind of had this moment of like, outside of having a family of my own, like, what do I want to do? And I said, I want to have a comic. And so I started making it and doing those things. So I completely understand that sentiment of like wanting to do the thing because you've always loved doing that thing. And then taking that leap of faith, as Miles Morales says in Spider-Verse, of like knowing that it's like, you're going to probably build the parachute on the way down, but you will get there if you just keep working at it. Like, as long as you keep trying and learning and understanding that you're gonna mess up and you're gonna, make mistakes, but if you just don't stop, you'll eventually get there. And so for me, yes, of course, spite and proving people wrong, but at the end of the day, you have to do it for yourself, truthfully, because if you don't do it for yourself, you're gonna get burnt out, you're gonna get tired, you're gonna want to quit, and it's not for the right reasons. So for me, I think it's always been in my blood. I mean, I grew up with this stuff. I was always like a TMNT Batman kid in the 90s. I grew up with the McDonald's like tie-ins and all those things. So I've always loved it. And now being, 35, I'm wanting to be in this in the best way and trying to do things how I think they should be done, and or partnering with Keith and figuring out, hey, how would like to see this? And so kind of how you said of like, communicating to the audience and just trying to build that, kind of foundational trust of like, hey, we know that we're new to this, but we're trying to be as transparent and open and honest as we can until hopefully within, the first or second or third Kickstarter, people start to see the product or the stories or whatever type of thing we're offering. So then they can see like, oh, we can trust these people with our money, or we can trust these with these stories or these experiences. And so I think that's the reason why we do it, or at least I do, is because I know we're capable of doing it, and I just want to get better at doing them the more times you know what I mean? If
Yeah,
that makes sense.
yeah,
So it's
yeah.
like I like we love Frost Road and we're super proud of it, or at least I'll say on the campaign side, like I think it's amazing in terms of what we're being able to do. Like to say that we're gonna, raise 20K our first time out when most people, go 5,000 or 7,000, which is completely respectful, but we just wanted to do a different type of campaign. To say that is amazing. And then we're gonna take those things, whether they be growing pains or learning points or whatever it may be, to then be like, okay, how do we make the next one better? How do we make it bigger? Or how do, whatever these iterations may be, so we can just be like, okay, we learn from this now, and then we can just hopefully benefit the backer as much as we can. So, or at least that's what I think.
Mm.
Keith, am I being too whimsy about it, or?
No, no, no. That's it. I mean, to learn from your mistakes and actually grow from them is probably one of the best things you can do. I think so many people are terrified of making a mistake that it immobilizes them. And you have to go out there and you have to try. And the funny thing is that everything that's out there that is successful is the one thing that made it when everything else didn't work. So you have to kind of learn from those mistakes until something does work. And that's kind of where we're at. This is 10 years of effort and our passion and love. But also, life is in the way and creators have to, constantly find a way to get their work out there. So, we love the idea that like as Chris was saying, we're very transparent about what we're doing because we want the audience to kind of see how we're growing, to have that trust, and that way they'll know that the next one is going to be just as good or better, and we're going to continue to have that relationship with our audience.
No, that's super cool for you, you guys to talk about that, get into it, because just to bring it back to video games, like I can't tell you how many times, like as like playing as Mason, I've died on the campaign. But it doesn't mean like, oh, you press quit, you put in another video game. It means like, no, you just got to figure out a way to survive so you can get through the next thing. And just to hear you guys, I guess, both apply that, like it's super powerful for me to hear. Also super inspirational to see two guys who, moved around a bit but still have managed to create things, write things, and put stuff out, despite everything going against you. So big thank you to both of you. Like, that is super cool to hear.
Yeah, there's a big joke in our industry. E3 is kind of going away right now, but E3 has been the big trade show for all the video games in our business. And the kind of joke in our industry is that you never leave the game industry, you just change booths at E3. And that's kind of what happens, is that, we're constantly working and collaborating with the same people. And that's why you see a lot of influence of people working together and doing things. And after this is like, I think we're up to like 700 productions now with PCB. So for us, we've had this amazing opportunity to collaborate with celebrities and writers and actors and writers and other creative directors. And so to take all that knowledge and history and put that into your own work, but then know that we're going to continue to collaborate and find new projects. Some of the new stuff that we have coming up that we're going to be announcing at San Diego Comic-Con, the collaborations of what we're doing is just insane. And it's kind of it's exciting because a lot of times you're like, don't realize that you've worked on so many things and you've collaborated with so many well-known people that the audience knows, but to know that they're collaborating with us now on our next projects is really inspirational because I think we're fans ourselves. So when you see someone that you really look up to their work and now you realize that they're a collaborator or creator with you on something is super exciting. So that's kind of the partnerships you're going to see from what we're doing at PCB. And like what we already did with Exiled and some of the other projects, people already know that we've got really good relationships with a lot of people in the community. And I think that's going to be sort of what stands a lot of our projects apart from everything else, is that collaboration that you're going to see.
And the hand in hand and the experiences, as you guys sort of mentioned earlier, with all the different tiers and being able to talk to different people. I think, again, it's one of the coolest parts about the project. Something I also can't wait to see people back in and get to talk to you guys about this. And also to that sort of effect too, with Frostroad, you guys also have to create a brand new world with this. And Keith, obviously you're no stranger when it comes to helping create new worlds and also building from old projects and being able to add something to it. So when you came up with this, what process came through your mind saying, like, this is the setting that I want in my book, with all the experience that you had in tow with, again, everything that you have worked on previously?
I mean, I'm a product of the post-Cold War era where, where we've been in this kind of world where the world could get nuked at any time, and there's kind of like this post-apocalyptic sort of influence between Alien and Mad Max and all these kinds of movies that I grew up with that were part of that era. And so it's not just the horror genre or the thriller genre, but it's like that sort of that post-apocalyptic world. And there's some beauty in that. And as dark and as depressing as that may sound, I think a lot of us kind of grew up kind of thinking about like, how would you survive? And we're kind of like preppers at heart. So I think survival horror, or at least the reality of what the world is like, combined with kind of how you would play out in that space, is definitely a big influence. And even during COVID, I think as tragic as that was and as horrific as that was, there was also kind of a weird, exciting part of it where we're all at home and we're kind of hunkering down against this storm that's kind of blowing across the entire planet. And so Frost is definitely a very timely and timeless story. And when I look back at when I started creating this with Brandon, and as we started painting it with Christopher and doing everything, it has that mood and that tone and that post-apocalyptic world that this could be real. And then the fact that it's based on real science, and we took a lot of things from real world sort of, not just science, but where it takes place and how it affects people. It's all real. And so to know and kind of, as an audience, start to read this and understand, like, wait a second, this is actually real. It's kind of strange. Just as a tangent, my mom had just called me the other day and said she was diagnosed with this effect that actually is a symptom of one of the things that's actually happened to the people in the book that is pretty tragic. And I was talking to my mom about the whole science about it, how that my book is kind of based on that. And so it's kind of scary to know that this is actually a real thing that actually could be on a whole nother level. And I think that what if, that post-apocalyptic sort of prepper attitude definitely is pervasive in this the creation of this story.
It's interesting to hear because, again, as somebody who played Black Ops, like, whether like I'm in Cuba, Vietnam, wherever it might be, I always had like the feeling of like, shoot, man, like if I were placed in this situation, who knows? Like if somebody who was, engaging in guerrilla warfare, maybe a random bombing, because you're stuck in those parts of the campaign, or sometimes if you're playing multiplayer, that's just the reality of it, right? So to see that you're applying that sort of caveat to your book, like, I think it's really cool. It's really cool as somebody who has played all these different video games, and now getting to see that in being able to experience that in a graphic novel with your own spin to it is something that hopefully people can engage in and back into.
Yeah, I mean, that part of the job, because we're doing all the high-end performance capture and the voiceover and working with all these amazing actors to pull off these performances. So a lot of it is using your imagination, right? Because a lot of the game isn't built yet, or some of the stuff we have to do in conjunction with the animation, or we're doing all the mocap or the voiceover. And so working with the actors, and especially as a performance director, we're having to actually go through all the scenes and really block out and act out everything that's there. So it's a lot of imagination, and you have to really put yourself in that mindset. So I think once you're in that world, it's not really a hard leap to imagine the what if and then start to see the world around you. And especially with graphic novels, it's sort of the perfect leap from that, because now you kind of know the world and how you want it to sound and look and feel. And then with someone like Christopher, we can bring it together and visualize it.
That's super awesome to hear. And speak to me a little bit about the bringing in the voice capture and the voiceover with that, being in the studio, how hours work with that, because I'm a little bit unfamiliar with the do-arounds and how-tos as far as all that's concerned. So if you could expand on that, if you may.
Well, performances in games, especially when you have photorealistic characters, stuff like we're doing with like a Dragon, or with like Call of Duty, or even things like Saints Row, all the way through any of the games that we do, especially the larger narrative games. You want to be able to sort of work hand in hand with the gameplay that's there, and then the cinematics of how the story plays out. And a lot of the cinematics or the storytelling elements in video games are all done in real time. Older games, we used to pre-render a lot of the scenes, but now the game engines are so powerful that we do a lot of that with the in-game engines. So to get the motion and the performances and the voice and the face and all the performances, we bring in real actors, we block out a lot of the scenes, and we kind of Frankenstein the performance in a sense that we're recording their voice or their stunts or their action, and bring that all together. So when you see games like Red Dead Redemption or The Last of Us or God of War or Like a Dragon or Black Ops, any of the Call of Duty stuff, all those cinematics are actors coming together on a motion capture stage with animators and performance directors, and then getting and blocking out all of that action to move through the animation that's there. So some games will have stories that will progress through, or sometimes they happen in real time. So it's a game like Titanfall 1, you would play the game as a multiplayer, but all of the characters around you were sort of filling in the story. Whereas something like Black Ops, you might have an interstitial in between where Mason's getting interrogated and wanting to know about the numbers, and then you flash back into Cuba or to one of the other stories. So storytelling is really interesting in games because it can be non-linear, whereas in a movie or in a comic book, it tends to be more in a linear fashion. So the storytelling and the way the actors perform and the way those performances come together is a little bit different in each medium. And so for us as directors, we have to work with talent that might come from movies, and now have to explain that we're going to be recording things in a non-linear way, or alternate paths, or replaceable scenes, or replaceable characters, or customizable characters. So it makes the narratives 10 times bigger of what we would do in film or television.
I never knew about all of the, backups and all of the extra work that you have to put into the studio with all the different teams, like just on one set to make sure that the capture is set. Because, like sometimes like I'll be asking myself, like, because like, I'm young, I'm nitpicking things. And I'm like, why did this person say that during, but now just to hear that, like, yeah, there's a lot of work that goes behind that and like figure out blocking and whatnot. Like, my mind is blown at how you guys are able to sync everything nearly up perfectly just to make sure that, whatever that moment in time is captured the way that you want it to.
Yeah, and the amount is also exponentially bigger in games, depending on what type of game it is. But an average half-hour TV show might only be 300 or 400 lines of dialogue, and a full motion picture like Frost Road, if it gets made into a film, it's about 1,500 lines of dialogue, 2,000 lines of dialogue. But a game like Black Ops or Persona might be 40, 60, 80,000 lines of dialogue. So there's so many more options, so much more gameplay, that exponential amount of assets go into making all those stories. And so you see the development time on a video game can also be years. I mean, look at Grand Theft Auto. I think that's about 10 or 12 years in the making. Red Dead Redemption was probably about 8 or 10 years. And even an average Call of Duty game can be anywhere from 2 to 5 years in development. So for us working on a graphic novel, obviously we had other aspects that kind of interfered with the release of the book, but you have to kind of look ahead when you're working on a game or a project and say, we're not delivering this project right now. It might not be out for 3 or 4 or 5 years. So what's going to be relevant at that time? So the storytelling, the performances, the creation of these projects, you have to know you're building for something for an audience in the future, and hopefully it'll still resonate with audiences at that time.
That is super cool. And I will jot all of that down in my brain for information the next time that my brain wants to nitpick at different aspects of a video game. So thank you for expanding on that, Keith. I really appreciate it.
Yeah.
And a sort of like a last question before we wrap sort of this up. Do you two have any tips on for anybody who might want to get into writing or just any overall part of the Hollywood business of it? Do you have any tips for newcomers or people who want to break in?
Yeah, I think do what you love. And I know that some people might disagree, but like I feel like you have to love what it is you're writing about and what you're doing, and you have to believe in it for the right reasons. Because as someone who worked in Disney and UTA, like I could, so my job was specifically working in media rights, which is in comic book adaptation or video game adaptation. And I could very easily see if someone was doing it for the wrong reasons. Like, oh, they're just trying to make this into a movie that hopefully becomes a thing. And it's one of those things where it's like, as Keith has said, it's taken him 10 years to make Frost Road. Like, you kind of have to be dedicated to doing that thing. And it's something that you're willing to go to the 10th degree or 10 years down the road for, because that's what fans need to know about. Like, they have to know that this creator or this creative team has kind of put in the time, or the 10,000 hours, as Malcolm Gladwell says, to be like, okay, this person has put in the work to make this the best thing they could be at the time that they were presenting it. And so I think for those people out there is like, don't think about other people going to help you to make those things. Yes, agents and managers can eventually get you like across that line, but you still have to do the hard work. Like, when no one's looking and and you're just tired and you don't want to write more, like, if it's something you still believe in and something you still want to accomplish, I feel it's like you kind of have to do it yourself. Like, no one's going to save you, as the tech bros on Instagram would say, is like, you kind of have to do it yourself. And so my thing is like, if it is something you believe in and that is your calling, whatever it may be, acting, directing, comics, drawing, whatever, anything in the creative field, like, just don't give up on yourself on it. Because that's like the one thing, like, only you have experienced what you've experienced and all those kind of things that make you special, whether it be your heritage, your upbringing, like, and the world needs to know that if that's something you want to bring into it, because who knows what your story could help someone else in their lives, because that's why we love storytelling, right? Like, we love to see like Frodo go from the Shire to Mount Doom and all those kind of things, because it's like it helps us live to hopefully be better people. And if that's what you want your story or your art to do, then you owe it to yourself and to those potential people to hopefully do it. And It may not be the first time, it may not be the fifth time, it may not be the 10th time, but to just not give up on yourself because you owe it to yourself because you don't want to live a life of regret. And I know it's a very whimsical way of saying things, but it's for me, it's the truth because that's where I'm at in my life. And I always want to help people because I got my college coaching degree and things like that. So I am always very much like, I got that dad energy or that uncle energy. And so I always say,
Nothing
like,
wrong with that, though.
yeah, but I've been having that since I was 20 years old, and I'm
Oh,
nowhere near being a dad or an uncle. And so I just say, like, like, just if you love it, do the thing, and as long as you're being a good human, like, great, try. And then if it doesn't succeed, if it succeeds, great. And if it doesn't, well, then if you loved it, try again. I don't know.
And I
Maybe.
think that's probably the difference between a job and a career, right? Because if it's a job, then you want to learn that craft and be the best you can, regardless of what the work is, right? Because you're doing what the job is. But a career is really something that you are passionate about and that you would do almost for free. Not that any one of us should do it for free, but it really shows that that's where your passion is. And then if you can get paid to do that work, then you know that you really love what you're doing because you would have done it without any of that money behind it. And I think that's the challenge, right? Is that like when people are looking at what they should do and if someone's going to college and they're like, what should I major in? Or if I'm a creator and what do I do? I think if you're just following a trend and you're seeing what's popular and you're just trying to do something because you can sort of capitalize on something that's hot at the moment, that's great and that's a great job and you can do something that's there. But for the longevity, you have to really be vested in what you're doing and you just have to put in the hours. Because I think as a creator, if someone came to you with the job and said, how many hours, really take to do this? It's going to take you 10 years to do your book and you do that kind of thing. I don't think anyone would say, oh yeah, I'm going to sign up and do that. It's going to pay the bills. So I don't think you can really go in with that. When I made my first motion picture, if I had really known how many hours it was, might have second guessed sort of where we were going to start off with the budget and everything else because it is a labor of love and you really have to love that. And so I think if you're a creator and you want to have some sustain your career, you have to find something that's going to constantly motivate you. And that's why you have to do what you love.
Well, I have been talking to two people who are clearly very passionate about the projects that they are doing, and I am very, very delighted to have been able to set an hour aside to be able to talk with you about the project and more about the insides as to not only the Kickstarter, but also the behind the scenes of everything you guys do. So I really, really want to say thank you. And a super big appreciation for the work you guys are doing and for being able to talk to me about this.
Awesome. Thanks for having us. Love the conversation.
Of course. Thank you, my friend.
No, thank you. And all of the links will be down below if you guys want to back it up, which I will say definitely yes again to these two wonderful people. I want to say thank you again to them. Everything will be down below. And I hope you guys are able to tune into the next time. I am Dom of X. You be you. Take care, guys. Like, subscribe, and all of the things. Have a wonderful day wherever you are.